Hello, my friends, and welcome to MSP Unplugged edition of Tech Talk Tuesday. I'm your host, Rick Smith. This is the place to learn tips, tricks, and strategies to help you run and grow your IT service business. Whether you're a one-person shop or a more established business leading a team for the journey, this is the place for you. Let me introduce you today to my co-host, Mr. Corey Kirkendahl. He is the president and CEO of 5K Technical Services out of Dallas, Texas. Corey, how are you today?
Hey, Rick, I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, Corey, this is as you know, you and I've talked off camera about this, but this is a non-formal conversation we're going to have about our business, for us to learn a little bit more about 5K Technical Services, and some, again, like I say, some tips, tricks, and strategies that you may have that you can share with the audience and how to grow our business here. Now, first, before we get into the conversation, for those who don't know, you can give us a little background on you personally, and then on 5K Technical Services.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So I'm gonna have to pick out because I see that awesome blanket on the back of your chair back there. So I live in Dallas. So those who in Dallas do as Dallas do. Cowboy fans, I'm a fan, right? We ain't been to the Super Bowl in 20-something years.
Yeah.
I get that every day. And so, but if I'm a fan, I'm a ride or die, no matter
We'll keep
what.
hope alive.
That's
This
what
is
I'm
the
saying,
year.
man. It's
This is
coming,
the year.
right? We're on the comeback. But take it away. We're on the comeback. So man, been in IT now since like 1990, man. My first job at IBM, Cisco, Dell, EMC, kind of did those things, man. And then probably back in 2006 or so, we decided that, hey, I'm gonna go and start my own thing. I always wanted to bring, and I had that entrepreneurial bug, and I had to go and scratch it, right? And say, hey, how do I go get this thing done? And that's one of the things where I had to go and say, let's go do it. So I walked in the house, told my wife, like, I'm gonna start my own business. She said, and keep working, right? I said, yeah, I'm gonna keep working, but for myself. She said, but how? Like, I said, I don't do nothing that's not planned. So I jumped out there and wanted to bring quality IT services to small, medium businesses and with a different spin, really focusing on the business. I'm a big ITIL guy, so I understand, business process and things from that perspective. And said, we're going to flip the script. We're going to be that thing where it's not the tail wagging the dog, not IT wagging the business. We're going to listen to their business problems and put together quality solutions to solve their issues, right? And walk down that path. And that's what we've been doing every now. Now, I'll tell you, every day I get up, like, I'm going to get me a job. And I remember, like, oh, man, I got one. You know what I'm saying? But it's been really cool to go down that path. And so we've been doing it when we, here in Dallas, man, not, very competitive industry, but, we do it well down here. Support a lot of churches, nonprofit, lawyers, and things from that perspective. And it's been good. A lot of give back to the community because I believe in, giving back and just, believe in quality over quantity of customers. And it's been fun. It's frustrating at times, but fun.
Yeah, I get it. And I'm laughing because our stories are similar when you say, I just went to my wife one day and said, hey, I'm going to start a business. You're going to do what? But, it's funny because when I was working, and I've told this story a couple of times, but I think it's funny. When I was working corporate America, I was miserable. It got to a point where I was not very happy and it shone on my face. And, at the time, my wife at the time was like, hey, I always make the joke that she was like, not with it, but she was the one who encouraged me with it. She was like, hey, if you're not happy, you're not going to do us all any good. So, if you want to start your business, if this is your passion, we got your back. And, I had 3 kids at the time, and it's like young kids at that time too. And it's like, wow, what am I doing? But, it worked out that, it was a good choice to make. And I'm like you, sometimes I wake up, it's like, I gotta go to work, but I am at work.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll tell something really funny. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, it's good.
I was talking to my mom on the phone maybe 2 days ago. My mom's 81 now, I think, and she I don't know. She understands what I do, but doesn't understand what I do. So she asked me yesterday or 2 days ago, about. She was talking about my W-2. I said, Mom, I haven't had a W-2 in 20 years. I don't even know what that
is. Yeah, man. I'm with you, bro. I'm with you. It's wild that you say you made. It's like I'm listening and talking to myself, man. When I came out, I had 3 young kids, did the exact same thing, and have that same conversation. But it's been cool to to show them that entrepreneurial spirit and where it comes from. That perspective, they get involved, they come down. They're my biggest cheerleaders, man. If we go out to eat and you go to a restaurant, and the menu says please reboot, my daughter be the first one. Hey, do you got an IT company because your menu don't work? I be like, that's what I'm talking about, man.
Awesome.
Be selling, baby.
Be
selling.
Sell it. That's right. That's awesome.
I love it, man. Be
That's
selling.
awesome.
She be doing her thing, man. And I always tell people, like, when they talk about family and how I did it, man, it's like, people say, well, what does 5K technical services mean, right? I was like, they said, you run 5K or, hey, everything $5,000. What does that look like? I said, no, it's me, my wife, my 3 kids, the 5 Kirkendalls, right? That's 5K right off the bat, right? And so it's a family business. They love it. And they introduce themselves. Say, my name is Sydney. I'm one of the 5Ks. That's what they do. And I'll be like, awesome, go with y'all self, man. That's what's up.
That's awesome. It's great too. Like I think about, in this industry, a lot of us have, are independent, we're independent business owners. So we have these very interesting ways that businesses got started or how we came up with the names. I always find that fascinating. Like I tell a story. My company used to be called Tay-Ray Solutions. And at the time when I started the company, before it was formally a company, I had my oldest daughter, Taylor Renee, and I named the company after her. Tay-Ray. And so my younger two, after a while, I was like, hey, how come Taylor has her own company? We don't have her name. So I let the kids name our company. I said, okay, we'll rebrand. You guys can rename the company. And what they did was they came up with, and I said, it has to be something that says like we're renewing or re-evolving, because it was basically when we were making that transition from break fix to MSP. So they came up with Renactus. It was supposed to be Renactus, which means new beginning, but somehow somebody left off one of the letters, so it became Renactus, and that's just been our running joke. The company, the new beginning, that's been spelled wrong, but it's just crazy how we get these names for these companies and how things get started. But I just thought that was interesting because I love telling the story about how the kids impact the business.
All day, man. Mm-hmm. And that reminds them of that they're a part of it, right? So they feel proud about it, man. And, I mean, they wear my logo shirts to work to school like it's polo, right? I'll be like, what y'all doing, man? I got this. I'll be like, that's what's up, man. It's great to see that pride, man, and that's what makes it all really good.
Mm-hmm. Us, that's cool. So tell us a little bit. You and I have talking all our personal stuff, but tell us a little about 5K. Do you guys have a particular vertical you focus on, or are you working with just I don't want to say anybody and everybody, but
yeah, we one of the things that we looked at from a while back, man. I came out. I really started because I was working in my church and like to do a lot of stuff, man. Church have volunteer teams and do things, and I wanted to make sure they had quality IT. So not by me, but by guys, hey, your vertical will be churches and nonprofits and give back. And so I spent a lot of time there, and I bring some unique things to that industry, man, to really focusing on what they do, because that industry is really heavily under attack. We do a lot of big things, but because they have the heart and say, well, we're protected by a bigger meaning. Hey, they know they're not going to focus on IT. They know they're going to focus on it because they're working on doing mission work and doing good things. So we wanted to make sure we brought something to the table to show that you got to protect that because they're part of a bigger piece of the puzzle, right? They have the lawyers, the doctors, the CEOs, and everything that's attending the churches. So therefore, you don't want their information to be compromised to do different things, right? You don't want to be that big nonprofit that sit there and then all your donors' information has been given away, right? You got all that information, right? So once you start having these conversations with them, they really come down to that path. And then we hold a lot of special conferences with them to really understand their business. Like I bring pastors together from different denominations to talk about how they do things different. And, for an impact of, what considers a great member and what should I be focusing on growth? In a traditional African-American church, most of the time the pastors literally pass away from the pulpit and it sends the church into a tailspin. Right. Well, in a United Methodist church, they transition pastors every 2 years. But the church is okay. So I wanted to let those guys come in and say, how did you do that? To teach the other churches that, hey, here's a succession plan, because they don't succession plan. They think that, hey, pastor's going to be here for 40 years and this is where it's going to be. Like he ain't going to leave.
Right.
And so and teaching them how to do succession planning. We've actually had successful pastors in that conversation that has retired early to be able to do it and be able to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and set up my predecessor who's going to come next and start mentoring them before to continue the legacy going down the path and having those great conversations. And then really teaching them how to incorporate technology into their sermons to grow their congregation. How do they use technology, right? How do they really bring it in, right? How we got the pastor controlling the sermon with his iPad inside. He's in full control, right? We have polls coming up on the thing where they're actually doing interactive Bible study to the point where they come in, the pastor hasn't prepared anything, and he asks the audience, what do we want to talk about today? And because social media and texting anonymously has brought the engagement higher. And so what happens is when he puts a poll question out there, he lets the audience tell him what he wants to listen to from a Bible study perspective. And people will respond via text and be anonymous before they would ask the question directly to him. And then he's able to have kind of a dynamic Bible study right there with technology in the room, doing things like that, really supporting. COVID actually really changed the game for a lot of churches, right? They closed the doors, they couldn't go, but then showing them how that most of the churches down here have a live service and an online service, and they literally have two separate congregations, teaching them how to interact with both. How do I keep them engaged? So those things have been really, really cool to show them how to continue to grow, show them the passion and how to communicate. It's been really good.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's like you said, COVID changed a lot, right? And we learned. It's amazing the things we had to adapt to. And I think about my church as well, when the word still had to get out, right? No one could physically go to church, or very few people went, but the word had to still get out. So technology was able to bridge that gap, right? And we see, I remember my first MSP client was in my church as well, right? And I remember struggling with trying to bring them along, because they're so used to doing things one way now. And I say this, and I don't mean it in any disrespect, but part of that was because a lot of most of the church officials were older, right? So they don't focus on technology. They're used to doing it one way. So it was interesting to try to help bring them along. Now, since they've exploded and they run a lot, there's a Sunday services broadcast live, stream live. They even figured out, how to get donations. People can tithe, electronically now, and it's just amazing how COVID was probably the kickstart of that, right? Or not? People were doing it prior. You see, a lot of the bigger churches were doing it prior, but it was able to bridge that gap and bring a whole new audience. And now they have, like, you can look at the live stream on Sundays, you got a full church, and then a whole bunch of people watching from home, which is awesome. And this is what I guess, again, how we bring, and this goes beyond, I'm thinking now beyond the church, because we have a lot of customers that we deal with who know they need technology, right? And they know that technology is a important part of their business. I tell everybody I meet with, technology is like an employee in some sense. Or your technology is an employee, for the simple sense that you need it to service your customers, that you need it to continue to run your business and know what's going on, right? At the same time, it is also it also serves you, I guess is the best way to say it. So, but it's vulnerable, just like your employees are vulnerable to being sick, to being compromised, for something happening to them. So I try to use that analogy to get them to understand the importance of what we do and why they need it.
All day, man. That that right there could be a sermon and a book and in a mini series all by itself. Right? And I feel the same way. And really, it comes back to, people ask me all the time when I go to a conference or I'm speaking, man, they be like, what do you do? I said, man, I'm in the relationship business, man. I just happen to do IT, man. They be like, what? And then that kicks the conversation, because that's true. Everything we do is relationship based, and that's how it goes. But my whole goal is understanding the business, right? You'd be surprised how often I walk into a business and we don't talk IT at all. Like, what do you do? What's your customer base? How do you serve your customers? How do you deliver products? How do you do those things? And they're looking at me like, man, I thought we were having an IT conversation. And I said, we are. I said, but we'll get to that. And I was like, so I just need to understand what it looks like. And they go, man, what's the deal? I said, look, you can come in here and tell me, Corey, I want you to build me this network. I want to build me the best IT network. It's going to be the bomb. And I'll go and I'll build you the best IT network. It'll be the bomb. And I'll make you spend as much money as you want to spend. And then you'll come to me and be like, this thing sucks. I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you do. I said, but look at the blinky lights. They look awesome. They'd be like, yo, but I hate it. I say, exactly. I said, because you didn't have the conversation. I built you something that doesn't support your business.
Right.
I don't know how you ship. Yo, you needed a print? Oh, you didn't tell me about printing. I don't know about all that. Oh, you needed to fax? Oh, man, I blew that away a long time ago. What are you talking about? Oh, you needed to scan documents? Oh, I don't know what that is, man. But look at the lights. They looking cool.
They look great. And you spent 20 grand on them.
Yeah. And I said, hey, look at that. I put LEDs in your closet. Look at it. Look at it, boy. They'd be like, but it don't work. I was like, exactly. I said, now we got to have a conversation so I can adapt and make sure the business supports you. And I said, then the other piece is when we do with nonprofits, because we work with grants and their donors, we actually go back to them and say, hey, let's take what we've done since you hired us. We take our spec sheet and let's put this into your grants. Let's put this into your opportunity to tell people what you're doing to be proactive, to protect their information and the things that you're doing, right? And man, our guys have won grants because, when you look at it, just like IT, right? I got one IT company, two IT company, three IT company. We all run RMMs. We all run PSAs. We all have good people. I said, but the differentiator is that third one says, hey, man, I got CISSPs on staff. I run this one. I follow this framework, zero trust. I do this and I do that. Wow, man, you just stepped up above the other two.
Right.
Then the other one. I said, it's the same way I do with them is I take what we've done and I extend it back to them because they, by default, by hiring us, they inherit the things that we do for them. Exactly. And we teach them how to incorporate that into their business. And even our other business, our accountants, right? They able to come back and say, hey, we do multi-factor authentication. We do this. We back up our data. We do this. We run zero trust VPN. They're able to talk to their clients and they're winning business based on hiring us and leveraging what we do. I say, put it out there. And they go, well, you don't work for us. I say, if you had an employee and a staff doing the same thing in your IT company, you should be telling them how great your marketing team is and how great your IT team is. Well, we're your IT team. And here's the things that we do for you. And man, they've been loving it because it's in every grant they write. It's in every quarterly review. Because, if you're a church and nonprofit, you're a 501c3. So you have business reviews, telling the church where your money's going, how you're spending. It's different to see a line item for IT for X. But it's a line item. But this is what we're doing to protect you, congregation. We have multi-factor. We're backing up. We got disaster recovery plan. We got da-da-da-da. It's a different conversation than just seeing a number. And that really works well with them, man. And that's what I encourage everybody to do is take what you do and teach them how to market it outbound into their internal customers as well as their external customers.
I think that's a great point. And I think it's something a lot of us don't think about. Like, in my experience, we just, we just had TechCon last week and TechCon Unplugged last week in Jersey. And I talked to a lot of MSPs, right? And I explained to them, like I said, we had these roundtable discussions that we had, and they were really informal, just talking about things, people shooting out questions, asking. And one of the things we were talking about was getting customers to understand what we do. And it goes back to something you said at the start of the segment is, it's not necessarily telling them the technical stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's the relationship. It's starting that understanding their business, establishing a good relationship with them. That comes first. And then they trust you on the technical stuff. And then it matters to them all of the technical stuff. And then you give them a way to show, whoever else that they're supporting, hey, this is what we're doing to protect you, right? So you know what you're doing. They understand now what you're doing to protect them. And then, for their patients, their clients, their congregation, whoever it may be, they can explain, hey, we're taking the proper safeguards to make sure that you're protected as well. Or doing, we're doing our best. And I think, because I always say to customers, and I said this a couple of times, over the weekend, the tech part is easy, right? It's like you say, we all know how to do it, right? The tech part is easy. So what differentiates you from the MSP down the block is that personal relationship that you have, that guy. And we talk about the fact that technical relationships are sticky, meaning it's hard for once you gain a customer, it becomes harder for them to leave. And it's because we screw up. We make mistakes. We don't always do things what we say we're gonna do, or it doesn't work out the way we planned it, or it doesn't work out in the customer's mind the way the way they thought it out when we told them. So there's always that bit of misunderstanding or friction. But for the most part, when you have a customer and they trust you, you get the quote unquote 9 lives of mistakes that they will stick with you. They will stay with you with. So I always focus on build relationships first.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, you give them now, telling them how to market what they do to their customers and their business. You give them another way now for them to stay sticky with their
all day,
their business
all day. And because what's hard is that we run this business. It's a non-tangible business, right? It's not like we have customers who are in steel fabrication, right? They got robots and CNC machines. So they see that CNC machine, they know what it's doing, and they'll pay them $1 million for that machine all day long. But what we do is they know we're doing it, but they can't see it. They can't feel it. They can't do anything. So that's where that relationship becomes really, really big. And I tell everybody, is when it comes down to it, is having that relationship. One of my great books I learned when I was at Cisco was called "Who's Got Your Back" by a guy named Keith Ferrazzi. Man, got to read it. Okay, what it is that you got to know who's wearing your T-shirt. You got to have somebody wearing your T-shirt. And I bring that back to my guys. I say every morning we have a daily huddle. And I said, guys, guess what? Man, our customers are having a daily huddle too. And guess what? We're not invited. I said, but we got to be invited. We got to be in that room, even though we're not in that room. And they go, how do you do that? I said, I need people in that room wearing our T-shirt all the time. So when I go out there and I do business reviews and things like that, I probably spend 15, 20 minutes with the decision makers, and the rest of my time I'm spending with the receptionists, the printer people, the people who are working, building those relationships, man, because they're the ones that in that room, they're asking, say, well, how's 5K doing? And man, they're the ones going to speak up. Hey, man, we're good. They're good. I love it, man. They got my print going. They're bringing that tangible piece back to the table, because the people up here, the exec, everything's working fine because we give them all the level of support. The workers are the ones who either love or hate you. Right. And I want those guys to be like, man, if you get rid of 5K, man, we gonna walk, man. We love those guys, right? And we're bringing them donuts. We know their kids. We know their, we have a relationship with them. We know their anniversaries. We calling them up. We're having a blast, and doing things with them. That's really cool. And that's what we like. That's that piece that really brings it into us, man, is understanding the people down. Because if you go into any IT company, man, or anywhere it comes, the first thing they say, man, don't call the IT guys. They're mean, they're jerks, they're totally disrespectful. And I want to flip that. Right? It's like I want to know that we're personable, we're good, and we want to have that opportunity to come in there and know that, hey, I heard your mom's having surgery this week, man. I just want to send some flowers. Where can I do that? I mean, we've been in situations where I had customers that we had them for a weekend, and their father passed away, and we showed up at the funeral with them, man. And that was just like, wow, I can't believe y'all did that. I was like, this is big. We're part of the family, right? Right. We don't call them family. We call them family members. Like when I send them out and say, welcome to the 5K family. And we really become part of the family, man. They're like, that's pretty cool. We like that.
And that's really good. And it's a lesson for us. I guess we talk more about customer relationships, right?
Yeah.
And you can't really, it's got to be part of your culture, your company culture. You can't fake it, right? Because their customers will know that as well, right? If you fake it. So it becomes important to know. And I always said, and sometimes this works out and sometimes our personalities don't clash. But the most important person at any client is not necessarily the business owner or the boss or the president. It's the gatekeeper or the influencer. 100%. It's the people that will sing your praises or will shoot you down or tell when you're not doing things right. You know what I mean? So those are the people that are most important in the company. It's like you say, we all focus on our CEOs and presidents to make sure they're happy, but it's the people in the trenches that, you know, they're the ones that really require that special attention, and that's who you want to be friends with, because also you learn from them. Not only do they speak your praises if when things are going, but you know, you develop relationships, develop friendships, but you also learn when things are not going right. They'll be the first person to tell you that, right? And tell you in a softer tone, something that you can understand, and you can, you know, you can get that, you can make those corrections, because you know, we sometimes think we're doing it all right, right?
Mhm.
This is the Renactus way, and this is the way we work, and this is the way we do it. But that doesn't necessarily work in every organization that you deal with, right? So those relationships, I think, are the most important. Those influencer and user relationships are, you know, and I think that's a lesson for all of us to keep in mind, is that, you know, that is probably the bigger part of what we do, and you know, keeping those people happy will keep us happy. Will keep us going. So we, you know, we try to, you know, we our goal really is to focus on that, keep that moving along. Now, let me ask you this: as we talk, you know, we've talked a lot about customer relationship, and I think that's good, because again, I think it's where the value in a relationship truly is. Like I say, the tech can be done, but let's
Right.
talk a little bit about the tech. And just your approach as you're looking. We talked a lot about you know, and I'm referring back to TechCon, because where we had a large influx of MSPs. A lot of people were new or were growing their business, and they were talking about putting together tech stacks. Now, I'm not necessarily asking you to tell us what you use for a tech stack, but if you were starting an MSP today, based on your experience, and you don't have to name products, but what things do you say to a person? Hey, you definitely need to include these 5, 6, 10 things in
Yeah.
your technology stack.
Yeah, 100%, man. You know, so I'll tell you, man. What I have is I have a diagram that sits there and says there's two key components that you have to have, right? You got to have a PSA and an RMM, and everything I have just kind of sits right there, and they just kind of tie. They must integrate with each other, but those are the heart and the lifeblood. Then what I do is that when I go out here and looking for a stack and where it comes from, first of all, you need to align with some type of framework, whether that's
Mhm.
CIS, whether that's NIST, or whatever that is, and say, this is where I'm going to go down. And any product I put in here needs to make sure it follows that framework, period. The next piece is I would make sure that I got to have integrations. I can't be doing what we call in the industry swivel chair. I can't be in this console, this console, this console, this console, this
Right.
console, because that's just unproductive. You can't be down that path, right? And make sure that if it doesn't integrate into my RMM or my PSA, then I don't even talk to it. Period.
Mhm.
It ain't even a conversation. Right? I don't care how shiny the ball is, how cool it is. If they don't integrate into my PSA, the cost of not integrating and the cost of swivel chair and the cost of missing something is too expensive.
Great
Too
point.
expensive, right? Got to be. It can't be 6 months from now. So then you're probably not going to be I'm not going to be your customer because I can't wait 6 months. So if I can, I'm gonna be there. But right now, if it doesn't integrate with that, don't break that rule. It has to be in there. The next piece is that when you go to things like MSP TechCon or ChannelCon or any of these things, man, you need to be talking to other MSPs. Don't sit at the table talking to the vendors because the vendors will say, hey, here's what I look like. They want to have it is. You got to go talk to the people who are using it, who's going to give you the good, the truth. That's why you got to leverage the community, right? Leverage
Mhm.
the community to say, hey, Rick, man, I'm looking at X. What do you think? Rick's going to tell you, hey, man, this is how it runs my business. This is how it works. These are the problems I had. Here's what you need to look at. Here's what it looks like. Rick's not going to bash it, not going to kill it. He's going to say, man, I'm going to give you what I need to run your business. Here's what happened with me. You can learn from that and move forward. And I'm not telling him right one way or the other, right? But that's the pieces where I would sit down and saying, you got to go build that out. Now that you have your framework, you sit there and say, hey, now I'm walking down. I got my MDR or whatever it is. I got my firewall. I got my basics, and I got what I got to get done. But also in my products, not necessarily in my offerings, I have a good, better, best,
Mhm.
right? And then what I do is everything we do is branded, right? So I have 5K Client Care, that's my MSP package. 5K Secure, that's my security package. What's in it can change.
Right.
But I'm branding our stuff, right? So that I don't talk about, hey, I got X product or I got this product, I got that. Here's 5K Secure, and this is what we protect. As long as the products protect that and do what it needs to get done, I can interact and move those parts in and out and do what I got to get done.
And no one knows the difference.
Nobody cares. Right. Exactly. Those are things that I would sit down and really start to focus on. Start with my PSA RMM, because I don't believe you're a true MSP if you don't have an MSP PSA RMM. That's just straight up. Right. And then I tell you is you got to eat your own dog food, you know, and you got to run the things that you're running in your own organization. I say one of the things that we do, I did a speaking tour with Channel Pro a couple of years ago, and what I did was I said, you got to get your own house in order, but we are a customer of ourselves. We onboarded ourselves. We're in documentation. We're in IT glue. Even right now, if I was having a problem with this video, I couldn't just walk back there and say, hey man, Barry, fix this for me. I got to open a case and send it through. And they go, man, but you the owner. What? I said, look, man, if I am having trouble getting support from my people, right, what do you think my customers are having, right?
Exactly.
If I'm getting bad response, getting lack of case notes, getting that, what do you think my customers are getting, right? Is it just because, oh, that's Corey, he can be sympathetic? Well, what if they say that's Judy, who can she be sympathetic, right? Right. I want to make sure that I have some valid paces back, but we're customers ourselves. So I run the phone system I run that sell is what I use. we a Mac and PC shop. We do Microsoft 365. I'm not that guy, but like, you know, here's what we got going on. I'm not going to go out there and sell you something that I don't use,
that you don't know
myself, because that's what I want to go out there and do it. Plus, it standardized. It helps us from a support perspective. If I'm running this version of firewall for everybody and this version of this for everybody and this version for this everybody, that makes my team more efficient and our SOPs work better than trying to support Cisco, Sophos, WatchGuard, Netgear, whatever, right? You got to go down and standardize, no matter how much you cheap, kind of be cheap, because I can go after the cheap Netgear today. But if I put all my eggs in Netgear, I can get any solution down to that price point as long as I'm pushing the same thing and having the right conversations, right? That's what you got to go do, is really sit down and work out what that looks like and build your stack based off of that. And then where I see a lot of people have challenges is that they don't understand the products. So they got 2 MDRs and 3 antiviruses and 4 backups, and they're all doing the exact same thing. And you're like, but you know, this right here is backing up 365, but don't you know that I can do BCDR and desktop backup and everything else? No, I got 3 other products that does
right.
Right. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Let's figure out how to match those things up to where you're really focusing and drilling into what it is that you need to get done to develop the solution, right? And that's where it all comes back. That's where it comes down to. That's my advice. I would say is pick a framework, make sure you got a PSA RMM, and if it don't integrate, don't play. Period.
I think that's a great point. And it's one that takes discipline, because a lot of us, and I'll hold myself guilty of this as well. We get that I've been I think I'm a reform now, but we've had that shiny object syndrome, right? Somebody comes to us with something, hey, this will do X, Y, and Z. And then our thing is, okay, but I have something that does that, but this will do it a little better, but it doesn't integrate, but I can get around that. You know, and I think what you're talking about is it's about business, it's about discipline, right? And it's about you know, having the discipline to say, hey, this doesn't work for us because it doesn't integrate. It doesn't work for us because it doesn't do this. And I go back to the other point you made, and I just wanted to highlight these things. You know, like, one is definitely have that discipline, know that it needs to integrate, because, you know, and know why it needs to integrate, right? Again, you're talking about the time it takes to get through all of these things, right? So if you have less places to go, makes sense. The other part of that, again, is knowing what you have and what it does, because you're right, spot on, that we will have things that do 2 or 3 products that do the same exact thing, and that makes absolutely no sense. It basically, falls back to what you just said too. This that makes more things that you have to look at. If you standardize on your hardware, and you should also standardize on your software, right? Or
all
your
day.
SaaS products that you offer. And I think those are very good points. And we get stuck on um trying to get the perfect product. And I say this, I don't think the perfect product exists, right?
No,
We
that's true.
have to find, first of all, define, and I guess one of the things we get, define what we need and what we're looking for, then find the product that best suits that, but falls into that category you said, that it integrates, right? That it doesn't do the same thing that another product I already have does. And then, and can we standardize that so that my techs,
Yeah.
don't have to go to 20 different windows every day, checking thing and looking for, having alerts come from everywhere under the sun that we have to check every day. So
Yeah.
um, I think those are very good points. And it takes we and I'll say this and we'll wrap up with that. But one of the things we always talk about is maturity level, right? Oh, I have to be at this level before I can do that. And I fight and say, no, you don't. It's the same way where you set out, say, I'm only going to take a customer that falls into this bracket, right? And if that is for whatever reason your customer bracket, stick with it. Don't chase the money for something that later on you're not going to be happy with. And it works the same way, because it ends
Yeah.
up biting us. No matter how much we make on it, we end up losing it in mental anguish or
Oh yeah.
energy, or the time it takes us, to deal with this client or learn stuff that we had no intention of learning or doing. So, that comes back to that discipline
Mhm.
part of this, right? Like learning. So if
Man.
I'm starting an MSP now, I say, know who your customers are, know who you want to be with, and learn to say no. And it's the
Yes.
same thing with the products, as you said, just learn
Right.
to have a standard and stick to it.
Man, that's key, man. You gotta remember that if you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else.
Exactly.
And I tell you, man, chasing that dollar and chasing that customer, man. If I call it my spidey sense, man. If my spidey sense start to go off, man, listen to it because
Mhm.
that's gonna be tough because that customer right there may pay you $5, but they're gonna get $150 worth of your time, and and
Exactly.
and, and it's gonna shift the balance and it's gonna upset the culture. And it's
Mhm.
okay to say no, right? It's okay to walk away. But I think one of the main things that enables you to do that is knowing your pricing, knowing your values, knowing what you got to get done. But then as you go out here and talk about this customer, remember the key piece that I love that you got to understand is there's a reason. This is the piece that I wish somebody had told me, and I figured it out. It's the best thing. What is the channel, right? What is the channel? So what that means is that if you go to any one of our partners or any one of our customers, you become an extension of their sales force. When you sell, they sell, right? So therefore, you got to realize there's a value in that, right? So the conversation is that you got to sit down and says, how do I get something back from that perspective? That's where you start talking about MDF funds. You start talking about NFRs. You start talking about products. There should be a product if you're using it. You shouldn't be paying for that product because you're using it and you're part of their sales force, right? The question you ask, well, we don't do NFRs. I say, well, you're a sales guy, right? Yeah. Do you pay for leveraging the product that's on your PC right now? No. What's the problem? I don't really understand, right? Because if you wasn't coming at me in the channel, guess what? You'd have to hire 3,000 of us, and you
Right.
would give it to them all for what? Free,
Mhm.
right? Part of the cost of doing business. But the return on their investment is going to be they're going to sell 30,000 of those things,
Right.
right? So you got to start leveraging the power you have and have those conversations and then engage. And if they're saying it's coming down and you're doing it, you should be part of their advisory boards or sitting in their committees to figure out where the product is growing because it becomes integral to your business, right? And I would say that's the piece is don't sleep on the power you have by being an MSP to the partners that are coming at you and what you use in your company either.
I think that's well said. Well said and great advice. Well, Corey, we're coming up on the end of the show, so we're going to wrap up here. I think we've had a great conversation, and I think particularly for those MSPs out here who are trying to grow their business, I think you've given some very powerful nuggets that people can hold on to and help apply them. But before we go, I want to ask you: is there anything you think we did not discuss that you would like to, add on, or anything you want to tell us? Anything else about 5K?
Nah, man, just hey, I love to give back, man, and people will have the information, man. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can always catch up. I love sharing, man, because I always live on this philosophy, man. When one MSP coughs, we all catch the cold.
Exactly.
So we got to make sure we all stay tied up and protected, so that we do that. And that's what I'm here for.
And that's great. I thank you for that. I always stress that I stress to MSPs, hey, come on the show, share your knowledge. Oh, I don't know this. You know more than you think, and you have knowledge that another MSP probably doesn't, or
100%.
may know but can't put it into the the proper context. So I appreciate you coming out today, giving us your time, sharing some of your knowledge. And you have an open invitation to come back anytime you want. And Paco told me that you guys are good friends, and he said he's a really good guy. And this is our first time meeting, and I'm glad we got a chance to chat.
100%.
And it won't be the last time you and I have a conversation, or
Sure.
or move forward with some things.
Hey, man. Hey, bro, you got that. Hey, all we're gonna say, man, is what about them boys?
Yeah, and I it's funny. I usually go to that Cowboy Giants game when it's at Giant Stadium, and we had TechCon this weekend, and I didn't realize the game was at night. I was just assumed it was the 4 o'clock, 1 or 4 o'clock. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to make it because I got TechCon. I was so upset when I realized that game was at 8. I could have been there to watch that butt kicking this weekend.
That shellacking, baby. That shellacking.
Sure. All right, guys, we're gonna sign off from our cowboy talk here, but we invite you all to tune in every Tuesday and Thursday. You can watch the video podcast on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged or facebook.com/ facebook.com/MSP Unplugged. Do us a favor, because it is important. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button to be notified whenever a new episode is available. Now, if you think Paco and I have a face for radio, you can always take us on the go. We're in your favorite podcatcher apps. We're on Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Again, for Corey and I, we want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on MSP Unplugged.